My insolent son faked my dementia to claim my wealth, but I gave him something he couldn't handle. Luca slammed a stack of papers onto my kitchen table so hard the salt shaker jumped. The sunlight coming through the window caught the edge of his jaw, clenched like he was holding back a snarl, but he did not bother hiding his contempt. "Mom, your brain is mush," he said, and the words hit me harder than the papers did. "You do not remember a damn thing. Just sign the papers. You are useless now." His wife stood behind him, with her arms crossed, her voice smooth and poisonous. "She is basically furniture with a heartbeat," she said. "Old people should not own property. She is just sitting on it, doing nothing." I sat there, my hands trembling in my lap, though I kept my face steady. I had spent a lifetime learning how to hold myself together when the people I loved the most decided I was worth less than what I provided. I looked at Luca, my only child, and I searched his face for the boy I once rocked to sleep. He was not there. "Sign it, Mom," he repeated, tapping the papers with the back of his finger like he was rushing a child who did not understand the alphabet. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I was hurt, but not surprised. This was not the first time Luca tried to shrink me down to nothing. To him, I had been nothing for years. If you feel justice deserves celebration, smash that hype button. Let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. Luca did not begin resenting me when I got old. No, my son started rewriting our life long before my hair turned silver. It began when he was 11. I remember him walking home from school with his face blotchy and red, his fists clenched at his sides. He came into the kitchen and threw his backpack down so hard the zipper snapped. "They laughed at me because of you," he shouted. "Because we are poor. Because I do not have Nike shoes like everyone else." His voice cracked, a boy's voice breaking in more ways than one. I opened my wallet and saw $8. The electricity bill was due the next day, and I had been stretching one pack of chicken across 3 dinners. There was no universe where I could afford $120 for a pair of shoes. I pulled him close, but he stiffened. "I will try, baby," I whispered, "just not now." He jerked away like my touch embarrassed him. In his mind, that moment became the story he would tell himself forever. Mom chose bills over me. A year later, his 12th birthday burned itself into his memory, but not the way it did into mine. He wanted a party like the rich kids had. Their parents rented bounce houses and catered food trucks and bought cakes with sparkles and custom themes. He wanted all of that, down to the matching jerseys his friends could wear home. I worked 2 shifts that week. I came home so tired I slept sitting up, but I bought a small cake and a few sodas and set out paper plates. That was all I could afford. Luca did not speak to me for 2 days. Years later he would say, "You ruined my childhood. You never gave me anything big." But he forgot who stayed awake, washing uniforms, so he would not go to school smelling like the diner grease that clung to my clothes. He forgot the nights I went without dinner so he could eat. When he was 15, his coach told him he had talent and recommended a summer football program that cost $2,500. Luca came home glowing, already imagining himself as a star. But that same week, the hospital sent another bill from the months we spent caring for his father before he died. I could not pay both. I chose the hospital bill. Luca stood in the living room, shaking with rage. "You killed my dreams," he screamed. "I could have been someone. You made me nothing." He was a boy, but the hatred in his face belonged to a grown man. That hatred never left. As he grew older, Luca created a mythology where he was always the victim of my limitations. I paid off his student loans. He said I did not support his real dreams. I refused to co-sign a dangerous business loan. He said I never believed in him. When his investments failed, he told people, I could have had my own company, but my mom blocked me. It did not matter that I worked 2 jobs for his schooling, skipped my own medical appointments, or carried his burdens like a second spine. Every sacrifice became a flaw in the story he rewrote about me. So when he stood in my kitchen calling my mind useless, it was not a surprise, just the next chapter of his decades-long narrative. But as I sat there, hands shaking, Something shifted inside me. Luca had no idea that everything he believed about my memory, my weakness, would soon turn against him. I remembered far more than he wanted. By the time Luca turned 40, the shine he once believed he carried had dulled into something bitter and sharp. He walked around with the kind of restless twitch you see in men who owe more than they can ever repay. He tried crypto first, then day trading, then what he called a small business venture that was really just pouring borrowed money into a hole and calling it opportunity. The bills piled up faster than he could lie about them. Collection agencies started calling his phone so often he silenced it permanently. His wife, Delia, was the one who said it aloud. "Your mom is sitting on a fully paid house and savings," she snapped one night, her voice carrying through my hallway even though they thought I was asleep. "We are drowning in debt. Do the math." She made money sound like oxygen, and Luca looked like a man gasping for air he thought he deserved by birthright. I knew pieces of their struggle, but not the depth of it. I only saw the foreclosure notices tucked into his mailbox, the tension in his jaw, the way Delia no longer wore her wedding ring to Sunday dinner. But what I did not know then was that the arithmetic of their fear had already reached a simple conclusion. My house, my savings, my life's work meant salvation for them. My home had been paid off years ago. I saved pennies from every shift, carried groceries in my arms so I would not waste money on bags, walked instead of taking the bus. I had a small retirement account that was barely enough to keep me comfortable, and a modest bit of stock from the home care agency where I worked for 30 years. That was all. But to Luca, drowning in the ocean of his own missteps, my little raft looked like a yacht. I overheard him tell Delia, "It is not stealing, Delia. It is just taking what she should have given us years ago." He said the words so casually, like my independence was a minor inconvenience delaying his financial rebirth. I remember standing behind the kitchen doorway, listening, feeling the familiar sting of being reimagined as a burden rather than a mother. The boy who once needed me to tie his shoes now needed me to disappear on paper, if not in life. Then, suddenly, Luca began acting like the son I used to pray he would become. He moved into my guest room to help out. He insisted on taking over my medication schedule. He brewed me coffee in the mornings, stirred honey into my tea at night, brought me water before bed like I was the center of his world. "You should let me take care of you now, Mom," he said with a softness that felt borrowed from someone else's child. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to think maybe time had softened him. Maybe age had made him kinder. I told myself, maybe he has changed. But something in his eyes said otherwise. It was not warmth, it was calculation. And yet, I ignored it. Loneliness can make even suspicion seem ungrateful. My doctor had prescribed me a very low dose of a sleep aid, benzodiazepine, because age had made my nights longer than they used to be. I also took medication for my blood pressure and a few vitamins. The routine was simple. Luca complicated it. He started giving me 2 pills instead of 1. Sometimes he handed me my evening tea and said, "I added the vitamins you always forget." The tea tasted different, thicker, somehow heavier, but I forced a smile. I never imagined a child poisoning his mother quietly, gently, under the disguise of care. He put antihistamines in my drinks, those over-the-counter ones that make people drowsy. He made me take the pills in an order that left my head spinning. He wrote in a little notebook. Doctor changed the dose and pointed to it if I questioned him, as if ink on paper was more trustworthy than my own memory. He told me not to bring my medications to appointments. "It is safer if I keep them here," he insisted. "You mix things up sometimes." He said it with a frown that made me feel small, like a student afraid to inconvenience her teacher. It is strange how easily shame grows when someone you love keeps watering it. The first time I forgot the stove, I laughed it off. The second time, the flame felt like a stranger. Soon I was losing track of days, repeating questions, standing in rooms with no memory of why I'd gone there. My body felt fine, but my mind was fogged, as if someone dimmed the lights behind my eyes. Even reading slipped away. I was scared, though I hid it, mothers always do. And every time the fog thickened, Luca was right there, placing a hand on my shoulder with that practiced frown. "See?" he said. "It is getting worse, Mom. You really need me." He said it like a verdict he had been waiting years to deliver. I nodded because I had no proof otherwise, and because something inside me whispered that maybe he was right. Maybe my mind truly was slipping. What I did not know yet was that my decline was not a disease, but a design. My son was not caring for me. He was preparing to kill my memory, one pill at a time. Luca's campaign to prove I was losing my mind did not begin with pills or doctor's notes. It started with small, cruel tricks that could be disguised as misunderstandings. One morning I walked into the kitchen and found the television remote sitting on the stovetop, right beside the burner. Before I could even reach for it, Luca lifted his phone and started recording. "Mom," he said sweetly, "hand me the phone, will you?" I looked at the remote, then at him, not understanding why he was asking for a phone he was clearly already holding. When I hesitated, he zoomed in on my face. "Mom," he repeated louder. "The phone. You are holding the phone." I handed him the remote because I did not know what else to do. He sighed dramatically. "You see? This is happening every day." I remember feeling a sting of shame, like I had failed a pop quiz I never studied for. Another day, he hid my reading glasses behind the microwave. I walked around the living room squinting at labels, trying to read the tiny print on my pill bottles. I tripped on the carpet edge and hit the couch shoulder first. Before asking if I was hurt, he pressed the record button. "This is what I deal with," he narrated, as if he were producing a documentary about my decline. "She cannot even find her glasses. She bumps into everything." I wanted to tell him I had read without glasses my entire life until age took that privilege, but the words stuck somewhere between embarrassment and fear. He was younger than me, taller than me, stronger than me, and for the first time in my life, I felt like a child under his surveillance. On other days he asked me trick questions while recording. "Mom, what day is it?" If I paused to think, he pounced. "She forgets even the simplest things." He filmed me calling the fridge the oven once, a mistake born from fatigue and whatever cocktail of medication he had slipped into my tea the night before. He filmed me leaving the back door cracked open when I went to take out the trash. He filmed me asking the same question twice in 10 minutes, even though I had been distracted the first time and did not catch his answer. He never filmed the moments I held conversations clearly, cooked with ease, or completed my crossword puzzles. He curated a highlight reel of my weakest moments and layered it with his voice saying, "She is like this all the time. She is completely gone." He said it with such certainty that sometimes I almost believed him. I learned later that he was not just collecting these videos for himself. Luca began applying for caregiver benefits, claiming he was providing full-time supervision to a mother with advanced dementia. He put down on official documents that I could not bathe myself, could not dress myself, could not prepare food, could not recognize familiar surroundings. He checked boxes that said I was a danger to myself and incapable of making informed decisions. He wrote my name on lines meant for the truly helpless, and he did so without shame or hesitation. One evening I overheard him talking to Delia again, this time in the hallway outside my bedroom. "Once this goes through," he whispered, "we will have it all in writing. She will be legally incompetent. Then we get guardianship and the house." Delia whispered back, "Just keep getting footage. The more confused she looks, the better." A few days later, he appeared with a small device in a neat little box. It looked like one of those modern gadgets older people wear to track their steps or remind them to take their pills. "Mom," he said gently, "this is a memory assistant. It will help you keep track of your schedule. It does everything for you. You just talk to it, and it records what you need. You do not have to remember anything anymore." The way he said "anymore" made me feel like my mind had already left me, like the best parts of me had evaporated. But I nodded. I wanted to be cooperative. I wanted him to think I was trying. He strapped the device on my wrist, and I said thank you, believing it was a lifeline when in truth it was a leash. I did not know then that the device recorded our conversations and uploaded them to a cloud account Luca controlled. It was marketed as a memory assistant, but the fine print revealed something else. It passively captured background audio to help users review their day, a feature Luca pretended not to know existed. He wanted proof of my confusion. He wanted hours of audio where I struggled to recall where I put my keys or what time my appointment was. He wanted a digital diary of decline. What he did not realize was that the device did not care who was talking. It captured everything. The clink of pills he dropped into my tea, the way he sighed impatiently when I asked what medication I was taking, the way he told Delia, "She will not remember any of this anyway." In trying to document my downfall, he left his fingerprints all over the crime. At that time, though, I did not know any of this. All I knew was the creeping fog inside my own head. I began to doubt myself deeply. I thought of my mother, who spent the last years of her life in a haze, calling out names of people long dead. I remembered holding her hand while she asked me who I was. The fear of becoming her made my heart race. What if Luca was right? What if the lights inside my mind were flickering out one by one? What if, someday soon, I could not find my own son in the shadows? The worst part was not the forgetting. It was not knowing whether the forgetting was real. I went to my regular checkup, the way older people often do, out of habit and a quiet sense of duty to our own aging bodies. I had been feeling off for weeks, more forgetful than usual, more foggy, more unsure of my own steps. When my doctor walked into the room, he greeted me the same way he always did, with a warm smile and a gentle pat on my shoulder. I had known him for over 15 years. He had seen me through broken bones, winter flu seasons, and the long months after my husband died. He had always told me I was one of his sharpest seniors. But that morning, when he asked how I was doing, I could not string my words together. My sentences felt tangled. My thoughts kept slipping before I could catch them. I could see the concern appear in his eyes like a cloud moving over the sun. He sat across from me, folding his hands, leaning forward in the way doctors do when they are about to ask something important. "Sue," he said softly, "who has been managing your medications lately?" My mouth went dry. "Luca has," I answered. "He said I do not need to remember anything anymore. He said it is better if he handles it." The doctor raised his eyebrows slightly, not in judgment, but in recognition of a pattern he had learned to look for in older patients. "And have there been any changes in your daily routine, anything unusual?" I tried to think, but thinking felt like moving through mud. "I have been more tired," I said, "more confused. It feels like I am floating away sometimes." I watched him write a note and circle something on my chart. He looked troubled, but he did not accuse anyone or say anything alarming. Instead, he tapped his pen lightly against the paper and said, "Sue, I want you to consider participating in a memory research program run by the university. It is very thorough and can help us understand what is happening." The idea scared me. I did not want to be poked and scanned and tested like a malfunctioning machine. But the fear of losing myself felt even bigger. I remembered watching my mother fade into Alzheimer's piece by piece, like a photograph bleaching in the sun. I could not let that happen without fighting. So I nodded. "If you think it will help," I said. He smiled gently. "I do. You are one of my brightest patients, Sue. Something in your presentation does not match typical cognitive decline patterns." The program started quickly. They tested my memory with long lists of words and patterns I was supposed to repeat. They had me draw shapes, solve simple puzzles, recall stories. They scanned my brain with an MRI machine that hummed so loudly it felt like standing inside a storm. They took my blood to test for everything from vitamin levels to inflammation to medication concentration. They even interviewed me about my daily environment, my caregivers, my routines. The whole process made me feel exposed, like someone was holding a mirror too close to my face. But somewhere deep inside, a small part of me hoped the truth would come out, even if I was afraid of what that truth might be. When the results returned, the head clinician, Dr. Reeves, asked to meet with me privately. He had the same serious tone my regular doctor had worn, but his eyes held something sharper curiosity mixed with concern. "Sue," he began, setting a file down gently, "your MRI is mostly clear. There are no signs of Alzheimer's or dementia-related degeneration." I blinked at him, confused. "But I have been forgetting so much," I said. "I feel like I am slipping." He nodded slowly. "Your cognitive tests show some fluctuation, but nothing consistent with early dementia. It is more like temporary impairment. Temporary fluctuation usually indicates an external factor, not internal decay. He flipped to another page. However, your blood work shows elevated levels of benzodiazepines and antihistamines, much higher than what your chart indicates you should be taking. For a moment, the room felt too still, too quiet. That is not possible, I whispered. I take what I am given. He looked at me with the kind of sadness doctors rarely let show. Sue, the medications in your system do not match the doses you have been prescribed. Someone has been increasing them. My breath caught. A cold, sharp ache spread down my spine. I felt betrayed in a way I could not put into words. Who would do that to me? I asked, though deep down a terrible suspicion had already begun to form. Dr. Reeves did not answer the question directly. Instead, he said, "We would like to observe you in a controlled environment for a week or two, just to see how your cognition responds without any outside influence. No judgment, no assumptions. We want clarity." I knew he was choosing his words carefully. He was not accusing Luca, but the implication hung in the air like smoke. I agreed. Part of me was terrified, but another part of me was desperate to feel normal again, even if just for a moment. They moved me into a quiet research wing in the university's clinical center. The nurses gave me the correct medication doses, nothing extra. They monitored my sleep and made sure I ate well. They encouraged me to walk, talk, read, rest. By the third day, my mind felt lighter. By the fifth, I could hold conversations without losing my place. By the seventh, I felt almost like myself again, the researchers noticed. They documented everything meticulously. One entry read, "When removed from the current home caregiver, cognitive function improves significantly," another said. "Symptoms inconsistent with degenerative disease, possible external cause." I did not need anyone to spell it out for me. Someone had been doing this to me. Someone who wanted me confused, helpless, dependent. Someone I loved. Someone who shared my blood. And for the first time in weeks, the fog inside me began to burn away, not because of medication, but because the truth was finally breaking through. The day of the hearing felt like walking into my own funeral while still breathing. I sat in the hallway listening to my son talk to his lawyer, his voice smooth and confident, as if he were preparing an acceptance speech rather than trying to strip his mother of autonomy. Luca's petition claimed I could not remember the day of the week, my address, or basic tasks. He said I wandered outside barefoot, left the stove on for hours, forgot where I lived. None of it was true as he framed it, but truth mattered less than the image he curated. He asked to be appointed my financial guardian. If granted, he would control my house, savings, medical decisions, my entire life. I would become a guest in my own existence, dependent on the son who engineered my confusion. The thought twisted my stomach. I had spent decades protecting him. Now he dragged me into a storm he created. When we entered the courtroom, the air felt colder. The judge nodded kindly. Luca slumped beside his attorney, performing exhaustion while still ready to hurt me. His lawyer began by describing my rapid cognitive decline. They showed exaggerated graphs and exaggerated claims. Then Luca stood up, pulled a tissue from his pocket, and said with a trembling voice, "I love my mom, but she is not there anymore. I am just trying to protect her. I cannot leave her alone. She forgets everything. She is confused all the time." He wiped the corner of his eye, though I saw no tears. It was the same look he wore as a teenager when he wanted to manipulate a teacher into forgiving a missing assignment. Delia followed his lead. She stood beside him, holding her hands together like a saint in a stained glass window. "We have been taking care of her 24/7, she said. "It is killing us, emotionally and financially. We have done everything we can, but she is unsafe in her current condition." She looked at me briefly, her brows drawn in a performance of sympathy, but there was something triumphant in the way she lifted her chin. Then came the videos. Clips of me hesitating. Clips of me stumbling. Clips of me asking the same question twice. Clips taken after Luca had sabotaged my medications and routines. The images stripped all context away, turning moments of exhaustion into evidence of degeneration. The judge watched quietly, occasionally glancing in my direction. I tried to hold her gaze, but shame pressed down on me like an invisible hand. Next, they submitted the forms Luca had filed for caregiver benefits. The government had already accepted them temporarily, and the official stamps made everything look more legitimate than it was. The courtroom murmured at the sight of the documents papers that suggested I was helpless, disoriented, fragile. I felt anger rising inside me, but it tangled with fear until I could not separate the two. Luca's lawyer then presented a stack of handwritten notes. "These are observations recorded over several months," he said. Luca stood behind him, nodding solemnly. The notes detailed my supposed forgetfulness, dates, times, and fabricated incidents. It looked like the journal of a dutiful son concerned about his fading mother. "I have been tracking her decline," Luca said, voice trembling again. "It is heartbreaking. I never wanted to bring this to court, but I cannot watch her deteriorate without stepping in." I wanted to shout that he was the one making me deteriorate, that every symptom was engineered, every moment manipulated. But under the weight of the courtroom's eyes, I felt myself shrinking. My breath sounded too loud, my tongue thick, my chest tight. When the judge asked simple questions, my birth date, the month, I answered correctly but stumbled. My voice shook. My hands trembled. I hated how small I felt. Because I was nervous, because he had designed this moment, the tiny slip became part of Luca's performance. I saw the judge's expression flicker with concern and doubt. I saw Luca glance at his lawyer, victorious. For the first time, I understood how fragile dignity becomes when someone else controls the narrative. The room felt like a box meant to flatten me. Everyone believed he had already won, and for a moment, even I did. Just when I thought the floor beneath me was going to give way, my attorney, Mr. Halden, finally rose from his seat. Until that moment, he had spoken only when required, calm as a man waiting for the tide to turn. He adjusted his glasses, walked to the center of the courtroom, and addressed the judge with a steady voice that cut clean through the tension. "Your Honor," he said, "before any ruling is made, we respectfully request a brief pause. We have an objective source of evidence far more reliable than any edited footage that the court needs to review. This evidence comes directly from the memory assistance device worn by Mrs. Sue at the insistence of Mr. Luca." Luca stiffened immediately. I watched the confidence drain from his face, leaving only a flicker of unease. His attorney whispered something quick and sharp into his ear, but Luca's eyes were locked on the small device now being handed to the clerk. The judge frowned thoughtfully. "Is this device authenticated?" she asked. "Yes, Your Honor," Halden replied. "It automatically uploads encrypted audio data to a cloud account registered under Mr. Luca's name. The timestamps cannot be altered. We have a legally obtained copy of the full logs." The judge nodded. "Proceed." The clerk connected the device to the courtroom speakers. A low hiss filled the room, the sound of the first few seconds of ambient recording. Then Luca's voice emerged, unmistakable and cold. "Just take the pills, Mom." "No, not 1, 2, doctor said 2. My heart clenched. The words that had felt foggy and confusing in real time now sat in the air like smoke, undeniable and sharp. The judge glanced toward the bench where Luca sat. He swallowed hard but did not speak. The next sound was the rustle of plastic, the clatter of pills tapped out of a bottle, and the faint splash as something dissolved into liquid. Then Luca again, sounding annoyed. "Drink it. All of it. Come on. It is not that hard." My throat burned listening to it. I remembered those nights, the bitter taste, the heaviness afterward, the shame of not knowing why I felt so slow. Another clip played. Luca's tone mocked me. "You forgot again. This is getting sad. Imagine when you will not even remember my face." I heard myself respond in a small, confused voice, apologizing for something that was never my fault. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Then came the worst part. Audio captured at night, Luca talking to Delia while he thought I was asleep. His laugh was casual, almost cheerful. "Once she is declared incompetent, we rent out the place. Beach house money, baby." Delia laughed too. "We should redo the kitchen before listing it," she whispered. "She is going to forget everything soon anyway." The sound of their laughter echoed across the silent courtroom like a slap. I looked around. Even the judge's clerk, a young woman who had remained emotionless until then, had her lips pressed tightly together. The judge leaned back in her chair, eyes narrowing as she studied Luca. "Is that your voice, Mr. Luca?" she asked. Luca hesitated for one long second, too many. "It could be edited," he said weakly. The judge raised an eyebrow. "The device uploads encrypted data directly to your account." Luca's attorney tugged at his sleeve, whispering urgently, but Luca was already unraveling. Before he could form another excuse, my attorney stepped forward again. "Your Honor, we would like to introduce additional data from the university's cognitive research program. It provides more insight into Mrs. Sue's condition." The judge gestured for the representative to approach. Dr. Reeves entered with a folder thick enough to flatten any remaining doubt. He began with simple facts. Mrs. Sue underwent a comprehensive 180-day review, including neurological imaging, environmental observation, and blood analysis. He handed the judge a packet showing graphs and charts. "What you will notice first, Your Honor, is the contrast between her cognitive function at home versus under supervised conditions." He pointed to a chart with a rising line. When separated from her home caregiver, her cognitive clarity improved significantly within 72 hours. Her short-term memory, reasoning, and spatial awareness showed measurable recovery. He turned another page. Additionally, her MRI scans show no evidence of Alzheimer's disease or any form of neurodegenerative disorder. The judge scanned the documents, expression tightening. Dr. Reeves continued. "But the most concerning findings come from her blood work." He lifted a lab sheet. Her benzodiazepine concentration was nearly double the prescribed dose, consistently across multiple samples. Additionally, there were antihistamine compounds present that were never part of her medical plan. He looked at the judge directly. "This pattern does not reflect accidental misuse. It reflects intentional alteration of medication." The courtroom felt like it had frozen. Every sound, every breath seemed to stop. "In simple terms," Dr. Reeves said, voice steady, "Mrs. Sue is not suffering from dementia. Her symptoms were artificially induced by someone modifying her medication." The judge set the papers down and stared straight at Luca. There was no softness left in her eyes. "Mr. Luca," she said slowly, "would you like to explain why you have been altering your mother's medication without any medical authorization?" Luca opened his mouth, but nothing coherent came out. His jaw worked uselessly, like he was chewing on panic. His eyes darted toward the exit, toward his lawyer, toward Delia, anywhere but toward me. For the first time in months, I saw something real in his expression. Not anger, not entitlement, fear. The same man who had tried to rewrite my reality was suddenly drowning in a truth he could not spin, could not manipulate, could not control. And as he looked around the courtroom for someone to save him, he realized the truth he had tried to bury was standing on its own, now bright, undeniable, and ready to swallow every lie he had ever told. The courtroom had already shifted against Luca, but what came next dismantled every remaining shield he thought he had. My attorney walked back to the evidence cart with the measured confidence of a man who was not just presenting documents, but laying out the final planks of a trap Luca had built for himself. He withdrew a thick envelope and handed copies to the judge, the clerk, and Luca's visibly rattled lawyer. "Your Honor," he began, "in addition to the audio evidence and medical testimony, we have documents submitted by Mr. Luca to obtain government caregiver benefits. These forms require strict legal accuracy." The judge skimmed the first page. Her expression hardened. My attorney continued. "For example, here is the section asking, have you intentionally caused or contributed to the cognitive confusion of the individual under your care?" Mr. Luca marked no. He flipped another page. Here is the section where he claimed Mrs. Sue cannot feed herself, cannot walk without assistance, and does not recognize him as her son. He paused deliberately. These claims contradict every piece of verified audio and video captured by the memory assistance device. The clerk played a new audio clip. My own voice emerged, clear and strong, telling Luca I was going on my morning walk. Then footsteps. Then Luca's frustrated mutter. "Walk slower for the camera, Mom. Act confused. That is the point." The entire courtroom reacted at once. Gasps, whispers, heads turning sharply toward him. The judge raised her hand to restore order, though she herself seemed shaken. My attorney gestured to the documents again. Not only did Mr. Luca falsify government forms, he also manufactured evidence to support those lies, all while financially benefiting from the fraud. He turned to the judge. This is not caregiving. This is exploitation for profit. The judge closed the folder, her jaw set. Mr. Luca, she said slowly, these discrepancies are extremely serious. Do you understand the gravity of what is being shown here? Luca's mouth worked uselessly. This is all taken out of context, he insisted. You do not understand. My mother, she needed help. His voice cracked, but not from sincerity. It cracked like something brittle, finally breaking. Before the judge could respond, the courtroom doors opened. 2 representatives from the Department of Social Services entered, followed closely by 2 police officers. They approached the front, handed documents to the bailiff, and announced, Your Honor, we are here regarding the ongoing investigation into Mr. Luca for welfare fraud, elder abuse, and medical misinformation. Luca whipped around in his chair, panic slicing through his face. What? No. This is ridiculous, he stammered. This is my mother. I was taking care of her. One of the officers spoke evenly. Sir, please stand. Luca stayed frozen, shaking his head. No, you do not understand. She really did forget things. This is all twisted. My mother needs me. The judge's voice rose, firm but controlled. Enough! She stared at him with an authority that silenced everyone. Mr. Luca, you were not caring for your mother. You were destroying her. The officer repeated. Sir, stand. This time, Luca obeyed. When they reached for his wrists, he jerked back. Do not touch me. I was helping her. She is lying. The courtroom erupted with murmurs. Luca thrashed once, but the officers held him firmly and snapped the cuffs around his wrists. The metallic click echoed across the room like a verdict in itself. For the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes, fear not of losing me, but of losing control of the world he had been manipulating. But the collapse was not over. Delia, who had remained rigid and silent since the audio played, suddenly stood, shaking with rage. She turned on Luca with a fury I had never seen. You said it was legal, she hissed. You said she was actually sick. You said we would be fine. Her voice wobbled with betrayal. You dragged us all into this. You told me she would be incompetent within months. You promised we would get the house. Luca stumbled backward as far as the cuffs allowed. Delia, please, listen. But she cut him off with a sharp, trembling breath. I am done, she said. I am filing for divorce. She grabbed her purse, reached for their child's hand, who had been sitting quietly with a relative, and headed for the exit without looking back. We are leaving, she said. You can ruin your own life without us. Not once did she look back at him. Guilt never competes with self-preservation. The courtroom watched in stunned silence as Luca's wife walked out, his family evaporating in front of him in the same room where he tried to erase mine. The judge waited for the door to close before continuing. Given the overwhelming evidence, she said, this court finds that Mrs. Sue is fully competent. The petition for guardianship is denied. My breath finally released. Furthermore, she continued, in light of the fraud, the medication tampering, and the exploitation demonstrated here today, Mr. Luca will be held without bail, pending criminal charges. Luca let out a broken whimper, but the judge was not done. Mr. Luca is hereby ordered to have no contact with Mrs. Sue. He is prohibited from participating in any caregiving roles or employment involving elder services. She signed another document and handed it to the bailiff. This court is forwarding all evidence to the IRS and the Social Services Fraud Unit for review. Additional charges may apply. I thought that would be the end. But my attorney stepped forward one last time. Your Honor, he said, given Mr. Luca's actions and the likely psychological evaluation he will undergo while detained, we request that Mrs. Sue be designated medical proxy for him during this period. She is his closest legal relative, and the court must appoint someone capable of making competent decisions on his behalf. We believe she meets that criteria." The courtroom buzzed again. Luca's knees almost buckled. The judge considered the request, then nodded. "Request granted." She struck her gavel. "During the mandated psychological evaluation period, Mrs. Sue shall serve as Mr. Luca's medical proxy." Luca looked at me then, truly looked at me, as if seeing me for the first time, not as an obstacle or a possession, but as the one person now legally empowered to decide his immediate fate. It was a look of disbelief, humiliation, terror. Everything he had tried to take from me, my autonomy, my dignity, my voice, had circled back and landed squarely in my hands. He had wanted to be my guardian. Now the mother he tried to erase was the one the law trusted to guard him. There are defeats that bruise a man, and there are defeats that end him. Luca had reached the second kind. I moved out of my old house, not because I was afraid, but because I wanted a new chapter that did not hold the echo of Luca's voice dripping poison into my life. I chose a small apartment in a community for older adults, a bright corner unit with a window that overlooked distant hills that turned gold at sunset. The first night I slept there, I woke up without the fog in my head, without the tightness in my chest that had lived with me for months. I made my own breakfast, brewed my own coffee, and for the first time in a long time, the morning tasted like freedom instead of fear. I joined a gentle yoga class taught by a retired nurse who believed stretching was a prayer to the body. I made friends, women who told stories about their grandchildren, their gardens, their second lives after the men they outlived. We walked together in the mornings, tracing the same paths until our feet memorized them like old hymns. I laughed more than I expected to. I slept through the night without waking to wonder if my mind was fading. I stopped questioning my own memory every time I misplaced a spoon or forgot where I set my glasses. I trusted myself again. I trusted the clear, steady thoughts that returned once I was no longer being drugged by the person I had trusted the most. One Thursday afternoon, I sat across from my attorney in his office. The sunlight filtered through blinds, striping his desk with warm bars of yellow. He asked me gently, "Have you given thought to what you want to do with your assets?" I had thought about nothing else for weeks. "Yes," I said. My voice was steady. "I want my life's work to go where it should have gone in the first place. To children who need a chance, to people who need protection, to those who have no one speaking for them." We spent the afternoon drafting documents. First, I created a scholarship fund for underprivileged children who wanted to join sports camps, the kind Luca once blamed me for not affording. Maybe some child out there would get the opportunity my son had twisted into resentment. Maybe it would change their life instead of souring it. Then I allocated a portion of my savings to nonprofits fighting elder abuse, organizations I had not even known existed until my own situation forced me to search for help. Finally, I set aside funds for the university's memory research program, the same one that had saved me from disappearing into Luca's narrative. When I signed the last page, I felt something inside me settle. My money was no longer a target. It was a gift. It was free. I did not expect to see Luca again, and I certainly did not request it. But before he was transferred to the psychiatric evaluation facility where he would remain during the early stages of his case, the authorities informed me he had asked for a brief supervised visit. They said I was under no obligation. I almost said no. But something in me, the part that still remembered the boy he once was, wanted closure, even if it came wrapped in pain. When they brought him into the visitation room, I barely recognized him. His hair was unwashed, his face drawn, his shoulders slumped. The arrogance he had once worn like armor was gone, stripped clean by consequences he had never imagined would touch him. He sat down across from me, his hands cuffed in front of him. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then his voice cracked. "Mom, please, remember the good times. I am still your son. I made mistakes, but I am your son." His eyes were watery, but not like the fake tears he conjured in the courtroom. These were the tears of a man who finally understood that his actions had consequences, that love could not be forged out of manipulation, that a mother was not an infinite well to be poisoned and still expected to give. I looked at him not with hatred, not with pity, but with the painful clarity of someone who has survived something she should never have had to face. "I remember everything, Luca," I said, my voice calm. "I remember the nights I went hungry so you could eat. I remember the shoes you never thanked me for. I remember every time you blamed me for your choices. And I remember when you tried to erase me while I was still alive. He shut his eyes, as if he could block out the words. I waited a beat, letting the silence settle, letting the truth weigh on him. Then I added the only thing left to say. The problem was never my memory, it was your conscience. And that is something no doctor can fix. His breath hitched. I stood up slowly. There was nothing left between us but the consequences he had created for himself. I turned toward the door. As it closed behind me, I heard nothing, not pleading, not shouting, not accusations. Just the hollow quiet of a man realizing the story he tried to control had slipped forever out of his hands. Outside, the wind brushed my cheek, soft and cool. I took a long breath. I felt the ground steady beneath my feet. For the first time in years, I was not surviving. I was free. Thank you, my dears, for staying with me until the end of this long road. Stories like mine are not easy to tell, and they are not easy to hear either. But they matter because somewhere out there, another quiet woman is carrying a pain she thinks no one will ever understand. And maybe, just maybe, my voice can help hers rise a little stronger. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of your own strength, or if it simply made you breathe a little deeper and think a little clearer, then I hope you will stay close. And if you want to hear more true stories from the women who lived through storms in silence, then gently reach over and hit that subscribe button to join our family here at Grandma True Stories. Your support means the world. It helps these stories travel farther, reach the ears that need them most, and remind every forgotten grandmother out there that her truth matters. I will see you in the next story, my loves. Until then, take care of your heart.